The Boogeyman, a name feared by many for decades and one that was given new meaning in the 1978 movie Halloween. A film that was made on a small budget brought to life one of the most relentless horror icons, whose existence has provided chills and nightmares to audiences for nearly 50 years. So where did the story for Halloween begin, and what influenced the haunting presence of The Shape? Welcome to my channel, my name is Em, aka Horror, and this is Shaping the Boogeyman. The 1970s was a time where horror movies were thriving within their own right. Movies such as The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre were providing horror fans with the scares they were so longingly craving for. Horror films that challenged not only religion but also the government were one thing, but movies that explored realistic themes where anyone could find themselves was a turning point in what would mould the future of horror. A walk in a quiet neighbourhood, an unexpected phone call, being home alone. These were all day-to-day occurrences that the average person would find themselves in. With nothing to threaten the security of these experiences, people felt safe not locking their doors and leaving the house unarmed. However, it was about time something challenged these daily norms, and little did people know this was about to happen, and all because of an idea by a small group of young creatives ready to shake up the ordinary. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill are now very well-known names in the horror industry. However, there was a time that they were youngsters with a dream, waiting for their once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This would soon come to them when producer Irwin Yablans approached Carpenter. Yablans had an idea, and one that would target some of the most innocent figures in society: babysitters. The idea was to base a movie around babysitters being stalked by a faceless killer on Halloween night. Despite some believing that the film was supposed to be called The Babysitter Murders, Yablans has confirmed it was always intended to be based on Halloween. Carpenter agreed to the project under the condition that he would have complete creative control of the movie and that his name would be in the title, a move that would, unknowingly to the pair, immortalise John Carpenter's name in the history of horror. However, it took more than just John Carpenter to create what would later become an iconic masterpiece, but with a small budget, this would need to be something that was carefully considered. Before anything else, there needed to be a story which would terrify those who watched. During this time, Carpenter was in a relationship with Deborah Hill, a script supervisor who he had worked with on previous projects. Together, they would take their professional relationship to the next level and would write a script carefully following the themes of what Yablans had wanted. Although the story and characters were written and created by Carpenter and Hill, Yablans did advise that he did not want too much blood and gore in the movie and was envisioning something that would play with the audience's minds for a more effective scare. Yablans promised a $300,000 budget, which even in the 70s was considered to be in the lower range. This would end up being funded by Mustafa Akkad, who initially was skeptical about the project, wanting no involvement. With a few harsh words from Yablans, he would eventually invest into the movie, which would end up changing the face of horror forever. With this in place, it was time to start preparing. Due to the tight funds and materials, those involved were formed of a tight-knit community, with everyone on set being students or amateur filmmakers, with word of mouth helping form the crew. Crew members' girlfriends were involved with makeup, hair and wardrobe, and some crew even worked for free. Finding the right people for the job seemed to be a task which fell into place easily, and with no big names at the time attached to the project, making full use of the money they had was not as hard a task when putting things together. Although there were no big names signed on, they did seem to strike gold with casting their leading lady by introducing a young woman by the name of Jamie Lee Curtis. Curtis was not a complete stranger to the acting world, however, as not only were her parents famous actors, but she was the daughter of Janet Leigh, whose role in Psycho has influenced the horror genre greatly. Despite the lack of experience within the cast and crew, the passion and determination was there, and each individual had a drive in their field. They were also able to cast Donald Pleasance in the role of Dr. Loomis. He was a well-known and respected actor at the time who had been in many recognisable titles. However, it wasn't just crew that were needed. Equipment was a vital part to get this movie right. They couldn't just settle for any old equipment for this movie though, and high-quality materials were needed. Out of the $300,000 budget, $70,000 of it was used on these pieces of equipment alone. Whilst this may seem a risky move for a team with such a small budget, there was a method to this madness. John Carpenter's reasoning was that if they used a high-quality camera, it would trick audiences into thinking this was a high-quality movie with a more extravagant budget. With all of this put together, however, the one thing that was crucial was the man behind the mask himself. With little description on how the killer should look, this left plenty of room for the crew to be creative within their means. The full description of what the killer's mask was to look like was vague, stating that he wore a Halloween mask made of rubber with the grotesque features of a man. With the task of finding the perfect mask for the figure, Tommy Lee Wallace had to find something quickly and on the cheap. When he was told to go find a mask, Wallace found himself in a magic shop on Hollywood Boulevard. There seemed to be masks that would fit any other frightening character, but he wasn't there to shop for a clown or monster. He needed a Halloween mask they didn't have. What did catch his eye though was a $2 Captain Kirk mask, in which he saw huge potential. The basic foundations of a man's face was there, all it needed was a little tweaking. Wallace went straight in with his creative side. He cut the eye holes, making them larger, shaved the sideburns, spray painted the hair a deeper brown and the face white, and gave Captain Kirk a spine-chilling makeover. The mask now looked completely different, and one that would fit perfectly into the horror genre. As soon as he presented the mask to John Carpenter and the crew, everyone was in agreement that this was something special, a mask that would stand out. It was at this point that they knew there and then that they had something truly impactful, and the journey to start bringing the shape to life was in full swing. The only thing needed to give him full character now was someone to put behind the mask. Keeping to who he knew and who would fit the role, Carpenter approached his friend Nick Castle. Having already established a friendship with him, he knew what Castle was capable of. His movement styles was something Carpenter liked, he was not going to cost an arm and a leg, and he was already signed up to the movie, helping out wherever he could. He was also not a stranger to acting or being in the industry, with a small acting role as an alien under his belt from when he was in a movie called Dark Star. With Castle accepting the role and everything in place, it was time to roll the camera. Despite being set in autumn in Illinois, the filming of Halloween took place over 20 days in the spring of 1977 in Southern California, primarily South Pasadena. Whilst being able to control most aspects of filming, there is one thing that could not be controlled: the Southern California weather. This immediately set some challenges for the filming of the movie. Trees were full and green, lawns were bright, and fallen leaves, so crucial to the film's atmosphere, were nowhere to be found. Rather than halt production, the crew improvised. Bags of artificial leaves were scattered across the streets and lawns before each take, then swept up and reused between shots. Sometimes the same leaves can be seen blowing across multiple locations, a practical trick that stretched both budget and patience, but ultimately helped sell the illusion of fall. Budget limitations followed the production everywhere. Long days were common and there was little room for mistakes. Film stock was expensive, so scenes had to be rehearsed carefully and shot efficiently. The pressure forced director John Carpenter to keep his camera setups simple, often favouring long, steady tracking shots rather than elaborate coverage. What began as necessity became style, giving the film its now iconic, creepy visual language. One of the most immediate on-set challenges was lighting, particularly during night shoots. Many scenes were filmed after dark to preserve the illusion of Halloween night, but the production lacked extensive lighting equipment. Instead of flooding scenes with light, cinematographer Dean Cundy leaned into darkness. Shadows were allowed to dominate the frame, with just enough light to suggest shapes and movement. This choice didn't just solve a problem, it created a sense of unease, making Michael Myers feel like he could be hiding anywhere. Despite Carpenter's confidence with Nick Castle, Michael Myers himself presented another unexpected hurdle. Castle was not a trained stunt performer, and his movements initially lacked the eerie precision Carpenter envisioned. Rather than replace him, Carpenter worked directly with Castle on set, instructing him to slow down, to move with purpose, and to let stillness do the work. Castle was told to imagine himself not as a man, but as a force, something patient and inevitable. The result was a performance defined by restraint, where minimal motion became deeply unsettling. The mask, now one of the most recognizable images in horror history, also posed challenges during filming. Under certain lighting conditions, it looked oddly blank or even unintentionally comical. Adjustments were made on set, tilting Michael's head, hiding parts of the face in shadow, or framing him partially out of view to preserve the mask's menace. Again, limitations forced creativity, and the film learned when not to show too much. Sound became another crucial area where problems turned into solutions. The on-location audio was often compromised by wind, distant traffic, or limited equipment, so much of the sound was reworked later. Carpenter, who also composed the score, had already begun experimenting with the now famous score. On-set scenes were often filmed without music, but Carpenter had a clear rhythm in mind. When the score was later layered over the footage, it transformed simple shots into moments of unbearable tension, guiding the audience's fear more efficiently than dialogue ever could. Right up to the end of filming followed how the rest of the movie was made. The final scene to be filmed was the opening POV scene through the eyes of a 6-year-old Michael, which was filmed in one night and took 20 shots to get right. The shot was a consistent 4-minute shot, and with heavy equipment, the scene proved to be more complex than anticipated, with crew literally jumping out of the way of the camera to keep out of view. That one night of filming created one of the most haunting opening scenes in the horror genre, a scene that would prove to be deeply unsettling. Finally happy with the movie they had, it was time for Michael to go home. The movie may have been completed, but it was now time to find an audience for the film. Yablans reached out to Warner Brothers, with whom he had previous connections, and hoped for the best. He also reached out to as many studios he could in hopes that the movie would find the success it needed in a big studio name. However, despite his efforts, no one showed up to the preview screening, as they did not see profit in horror movies at the time. With no other option, and not wanting to accept defeat just yet, Yablans decided the best move would be to distribute the movie himself. If it failed, he would be able to bury the movie away and move on. However, there was an advantage to him doing this. This way, he could distribute the film to audiences who would resonate with the movie the most. This is exactly what he did in Kansas City, Missouri, in a small community which resembled the Middle American setting, matching the movie's atmosphere. The film begins on Halloween night in 1963 in Haddonfield, Illinois. Through a first-person point of view, a 6-year-old boy named Michael Myers stalks and murders his teenage sister Judith. After the killing, Michael is found outside the house holding a knife, silent and emotionless. He is institutionalized at Smith's Grove Sanitarium. 15 years later, on October the 30th, 1978, Dr. Sam Loomis, Michael's psychiatrist, arrives at Smith's Grove to transfer Michael to a court hearing. He discovers that Michael has escaped during a storm. Loomis warns that Michael is not simply a man, but something purely evil, and immediately sets out to find him. Michael drives back to his hometown and begins stalking the residents. Throughout the day, he follows a teenage girl named Laurie Strode, observing her from a distance without confronting her. Laurie is a responsible high school student tasked with babysitting on Halloween night. Her friends Annie and Linda are also babysitting nearby. While the teenagers treat the night casually, Michael quietly positions himself around them. One by one, Michael kills Annie and Linda, staging their bodies in unsettling ways. Laurie, still unaware of the danger, begins to notice that something is wrong when her friends stop responding to her. When she goes to investigate, she discovers the bodies and realises she is also a target. Michael attacks Laurie repeatedly, and Laurie manages to escape temporarily and protects the children she is babysitting. Dr. Loomis arrives and shoots Michael multiple times, causing him to fall from a second-story balcony. When Loomis looks, Michael's body is gone. The film ends with shots of quiet, empty locations around Haddonfield, accompanied by the famous score and Michael's breathing, a reminder that evil does not die, it simply disappears. Although sales over the opening weekend were slow, within a week the sales had shot up and word of mouth had a huge part in this, with it literally being the talk of the town. Yablons then moved on to the Chicago Film Festival, where Halloween received nothing but positive reviews by well-known names, which launched the film into mainstream spotlight. It fast became the most well-known and profitable independent movie, grossing over $70 million. People were in awe of the film and at the same time were seeing new fears they had never thought imaginable. Audiences were soon quoting the film and being truly petrified by what they had experienced. Halloween was not only doing what it initially set out to do, it was exceeding what all involved ever imagined it could. It was a true success. The long nights, obstacles along the way, and the effort that went into every step were truly paying off. Halloween 1978 was the beginning of something incredible. It started not only one of the most famous horror franchises, but also a completely new take on horror. It has built a name for itself, with many sequels following over the decades, and is a name which still stands strong nearly 50 years later. It brought new household names in not only horror icons but also actors, and gave opportunities where they may never have been given. However, it hasn't stopped there. It inspired many other horror franchises which audiences have grown to love, from Friday the 13th to Scream. What started as a collective dream of a small group of people became one of the largest and most respected names in the world of horror. It's paved the way for others to build their own foundations and has given them a chance to do the same, proving that passion goes a long way. In the end, Halloween endures not because of what it shows, but because of what it suggests. Made with limited time, money and resources, the film transformed those restrictions into atmosphere, tension and lasting fear. Decades later, its influence can still be felt in nearly every slasher film that followed, proving that true horror doesn't come from excess, but from simplicity, patience, and the quiet idea that evil can exist anywhere.